all of our partners realize that the heart of a community is the ranchers, the farmers, everybody in our small town.
You don't think you make a great big impact in the world coming from a small community like this, but you really do. It's pretty amazing.
Beyond just the food and fiber that seem pretty obvious of why ranching is important, there are other things that ranchers as land stewards are doing also. We're caretaking not just habitat for wildlife, but also clean water and clean air and everything that flows downstream to the bigger population centers. We're responsible for all of those things, and so when we're doing a good job with our cattle management and with our land management, we're having all of these positive environmental impacts, in addition to providing healthy, safe, secure protein that goes all over the world.
ACES started just as kind of a conversation amongst a number of people in the community saying, you know, rather than wring our hands and worry about where things are going with the community and with the landscape, why don't we get together and talk about these things? There's all these different issues that are affecting us.
We had two people who'd asked us to meet to talk specifically about wildlife issues, elk and elk overpopulation and sage grouse. The conversation started with wildlife, but then kind of moved towards there are these bigger issues of just the community in general, and how do we keep the community going, and how do we keep people here, bring people in to keep it going.
When you want to talk about community, an organic group like ACES, which started from like-minded people getting together and wanting to build a solid community, it's just amazing what you can get done.
ACES stands for Agricultural Community Enhancement and Sustainability.
Really, the mission of the Winnett ACES is to enhance the community by supporting families, their traditions, and supporting our land through conservation and education. Whatever that goal is, we're able to bring a lot of people to the table and accomplish that.
We've provided employment here in Winnett, and then helping to bring conservation dollars in to help people implement infrastructure improvements. And then big picture is, I think, just providing that network and a place that people feel comfortable visiting, sharing stories, sharing mentorship that just happens without it being organized, whether it's your neighbor or being introduced to new people through different organizations that we're working with.
ACES has various committees that allow nonprofits and outside interests like myself, as well as local residents or ranchers in the region to be involved. Some of those are really focused on people and community development. And so the work that they're doing in town around community need of housing and retail and historic renovation. Others are really focused on conservation, like the Conservation Committee that's doing a lot of cost share work and bringing infrastructure improvements to ranches. There's voices on that committee that are thinking about and have metrics around the impact on animals and looking at increased number of songbirds or easier migration.
The big project that we'll be working on for a really long time is how we might lease or own a ranch that then we can lease to multiple grazers in a grass bank form, where they're either in their transition or maybe new ranchers.
We could help out some younger people to get a cow herd built up so then they could have some equity when they would take over the ranch.
When we first moved here, I was pretty involved and I was going to all the meetings and of course really interested in the grass bank stuff. We just got moved here, scrambling trying to find grass and so on and so forth, and just so happens to where Winnett ACES that year had a deal over by Roundup to try this grass bank idea out. So we ended up getting in on that, and it bought us a year for grass, and they've been a big part of this place as far as, and always will be. Without that year of 60, 70 head of cows over there grazing, who knows what it would look like for us right now without that opportunity. So they've played a big role.
We've done a lot of educational opportunities for producers. We brought in a lot of speakers. And then we also provide tours and different things for members of the public. Specifically, MSU has come out a couple of times with people that just want to see the grasslands and want to learn more about ranching and meet landowners. And so we do that trying to help people learn more about beef specifically and where beef comes from and how it's raised.
Winnett ACES has done a heck of a lot in a short amount of time.
We were open to ideas, and we're still open to ideas. Anybody can show up at one of our meetings and say, why aren't we doing whatever? And we'll say, woof, that's a viable idea, let's talk about that. And some great things have come to pass because of that. The ACES group turned out to be far more successful than I ever thought it'd be when we started.
The main reason that we keep our rangeland intact and take good care of it is because that is how we make our living. If we don't take care of that rangeland and keep it in the best condition that it can be, we can't pay our bills and we won't be here.
So even though I don't ranch directly, I live amongst and around people who know every songbird and who can tell what grass is coming up when and have a close relationship to the land. I also think that the ranching provides a real quality of life, whether you're a rancher or not. But for me, the space all around where I live is open. I have clean water and I have clean air and I have food that's produced locally that I can buy. And so all of that is a direct response to ranching being on the landscape. The Northern Great Plains is very significant in part because it's one of the last intact ecosystems in our country. This ecosystem, because of great management from ranchers, remains intact, and you've got biodiversity both in plants and in animals that migrate across this landscape, whether they're feathered animals or hooved animals that depend on this kind of patchwork of public and private land. But also when we're thinking about climate impacts and carbon, the grasslands are an incredible carbon sink. Those are some significant reasons that it is of such interest to environmental groups or outside interests or even government interests.
ACES takes a really unique approach in kind of building on what ranchers are already excellent at. Ranchers are really good at just continuing to support our grasslands through thoughtful grazing, through stewarding our land in a lot of different ways. And so ACES is able to come in a lot of times and support ranchers where they might not have the resources to do the practices that they want. Maybe we can get them a few more water tanks in different areas so that they can improve their grazing pattern even more or give an area more rest than they were able to before.
What's good for the rancher's bottom line has also been really good for wildlife. Helps with economics of putting in the new fence and water lines and different birds.
It's great that we can support ranchers in different ways that really support both conservation and the economic viability of ranchers. And then the bonus on top is that we're building community as we do it.
Most of us want to leave things better than we found it, and that's the idea behind Regenerative, of that we're making it better and trying to understand maybe too a little more of the natural processes of how the environment works and how what we're doing impacts that and how what we're doing could impact it differently. And so if we're not paying attention to those things, then we don't know what our impact is and how it might be different and how it might be more beneficial.
This all here was farm ground for 40 years. It's been planted back to grass, and I've been working to expedite its return to a native range.
He does that through higher intensity rotational grazing with the poly wire, moves multiple times a week.
Since moving out here and starting these regenerative practices, I've really come to enjoy watching how the range reacts to livestock pressure. And there's been some minor failures, but overall it's been very successful in my opinion.
We applied for and received funds from Winnett ACES to do a fencing project. We cross-fenced a very large pasture into 2 pastures, so now we can rotate through that better. And the way that worked was we provided 50% of the cost, and then ACES provided 50% of the cost. And they do that for a variety of projects, but ACES provides 50%.
Beaver dam analogs have been huge. With the drought has been the main driver, people thinking, well, if I could slow down the water just a little bit, let it soak in and turn my grass greener for a little bit longer. We do a lot of conifer encroachment projects, pushing back those conifers that are growing out onto the range where they shouldn't be. So it all ties together, but those are the huge things that we're doing right now.
We have not taken money from any partner to do something they've asked us to do. It's something that we want to do. Every project and every funding agreement is a separate conversation, and we just basically take it one step at a time and plan that we will probably always do that.
Winnett is just like thousands of other small towns scattered across the West. It serves the people in this area. We all can't live here and be successfully out on our farms and ranches if there's not some place for our kids to go to school, someplace to buy groceries or buy gas, or those basic needs that any community has. We want our local businesses to survive because we need them, and of course they need us. We're their customers, but they provide what we need to stay here.
Growing up in Billings, I didn't really see how important rural communities are and being part of one is. And so now that I'm out here and raising the kids north of Winnett and just having our oldest in school right now has been kind of an eye-opener, knowing and understanding a little bit more how important it is to keep the rural schools going.
Overall, the community of Winnett really is a wonderful place to live, even though people are a bit spread out. Just wonderful to see all of these families kind of coming together at school events, seeing each other in the grocery store. It's great that such a rural county can have a really solid K-12 school. Anything that ACES does is all about enhancing our community so that it's a place where young people want to come back to, maybe people want to retire at. We want to have people from all ages there, filling our school, filling restaurants, able to service the tire shop, trying to get feed, talking to the NRCS, all of those things.
I could go on and on about what is unique to Winnett. I moved to Winnett when I was working here from another community. I didn't need to be here. I wasn't working here full time, but I was really drawn to the things that I think makes Winnett stand out. This is a place that is desperately and beautifully ambitious. There's not a limitation to what these people and this place see in their future. They're not only ambitious, but they achieve what they want for their future. And they aren't waiting for someone else to bring it to them or do it for them. And they wholeheartedly, and for good reason, believe that they can create the future that they want. And that is an incredibly strong component of this community.
Just the drive to enhance the community, to bring people here, to provide opportunities for every dynamic, ranchers, school, just community and member, elderly, young people, everything. Like they've just done so much to bring everybody together. The community center is obviously a huge new thing for our town, and I think that that's bringing people near and far.
The community center has been a huge blessing, even just in the short time that it's been opened, with the youth program that they had after school Monday through Wednesday, or the summer programs that they're putting on.
Our 55 main building is kind of an example of, we don't have very many of our historic buildings left, and so we had the opportunity to save that building. It was going to be torn down for the community center, and they gave it to ACES to move out of the way of the community center. So in that one little building, by saving history and connecting ourselves to our roots, we've also then created a place for people to come together and enjoy each other.
We're hoping that it will someday be a coffee shop, and there will be an apartment upstairs for teachers. Teacher housing is a big issue in the Winnett area. There have also been some very large grants that were secured to redo the top of the courthouse, so it's going to be great to have office space up there as well as apartments. There's been a couple different projects like that are really benefiting the community.
I think one big piece to keeping our community sustainable is keeping ranchers on the landscape. At the end of the day, this community depends on agriculture. It's the density of ranchers that we have here that allows each operation to still be viable, both economically and socially, right? There's a lot of helping each other out. And so I think keeping ranchers on the land is a key component to our viability as a community. And then I think what brings the younger generation back are those kind of community amenities, if you will. But at the end of the day, I think it really depends on keeping ranches viable and then filling in those community amenities after that.